So I'm on here and I'm going to come clean with you all. It's not going to be one of those good videos. I'm not here to inspire anybody. But I am here to make a confession because I have prided myself on being very transparent to all of you who've been on this channel. And I really appreciate you being here. And I hope that you decide to stay, despite what I'm about to say. Now, as you know, over the past few months, I have been making videos about individuals who have been pretty much casting their burdens upon me. I talked about a woman who was casting her burdens upon me, transferring perverse spirits to me, and, pretty much taking everything from me, had destroyed my ministry and everything. The Lord had revealed this to me. It had taken years for me to understand what was going on, and, this woman has been a constant hindrance in my life, along with a man who caused me to lose my children. Now, before I talk about what happened, I want to talk about the news that I just discovered last week. I haven't made videos in a while, and I have just been kind of, trying to process everything because this was not supposed to happen. As y'all know, I shared my testimony when I first came back to God many years ago, and I wrote a fitness book for women, and I went on this spiritual transformation as well as this physical transformation, and God brought me out of all types of bondages and sins, and I shared that testimony gladly and proudly with everyone. And I feel like that testimony has been destroyed because there have been people sent as, satanic agents, vessels who were sent to destroy my life. I did not know what was going on. I did not know how to fight against it. But long story short, these people have done everything in their power to destroy everything about me, to destroy the ministry that God had for my life, and to cause me to fall. And one of the most prevalent persons was this man by the name of Jim Penny, aka James Penny III. And he started off, I didn't know what was going on, but I would feel pain cutting into my feet. And I'm gonna insert a video clip here of how this man kept cutting into my feet. I'll show you all the damage to my feet because it's getting worse, and it's like, it hurts really bad. You can see as my heel is like almost like a purplish blue bruising, and so it's really bruised. And it's been like this for years. It's been going on for years, since 2011, where I will feel something slicing into my feet at night. It will be spiritual. You can see all these cuts and incisions in my feet. They didn't used to look like this before all this stuff happened. Look at all these. These are incisions they used. Look at all this. Let me pull it up closer. See these? This is incisions, little slices done every night. It's been going over a period of years. Now you can see it better. This is all the incisions that were made in my feet. It's like someone uses a fine instrument, some type of surgical tool almost, and just slices, and it just slices every night. And they're using altars, because the Lord told me to have my feet on altars, so they're using things. It's like when people can maybe make a puppet or some type of voodoo doll or something and put your picture image on it, or they can use something, a personal possession that they have of yours, or item, and they can have this thing represent you and start putting incisions on it, and then the incisions will come upon your own foot or your body. And this is what they've been doing to me, literally putting me through excruciating pain. It's like it's bruised. You see all these little, that's not how a normal foot looks, with all those lines and slashes in it. And this has been going on, like I said, this person has been doing this for years. You see all the bruise and the black and all this bruising. This is my feet. This didn't come from running or any of that. It came from someone taking something and slicing, literally slicing all the time, causing incisions into my feet almost every single night. As you can see, I have these deep gashes and marks all in my foot where someone has been engraving. He's been using something to engrave my foot, and I wake up in excruciating pain. Sometimes I can't even walk, or have to use a cane and just pretty much hobble out of bed. Every night I was in excruciating pain. I would feel something slicing at my feet, but nothing would be there. I would feel something cutting into my feet, excruciating pain, like something was just slicing with a surgical utensil or instrument. And I would be in literal pain, crying out to God to stop it. I didn't know why I was going through this. And then I would have something just hitting me on my clavicle, hitting me on my shoulder bones, and just torment me, just doing little things to torment me. And it got to a point where I felt like something was sexually violating me at night. And so I didn't really say much about it. I only confided in my mom, and we prayed to God, and I contacted this minister who I was going to church. Well, he was a pastor who I was going to his church, and he told me to start listening to praise music at night, playing that while I was asleep, and he prayed for me. So after that, it went away for a while. But my ministry and everything I was doing, after I had lost all this weight and started running, being fit, I started gaining all this weight back. My diet changed. I'd gone from eating healthy to wanting and craving junk food again. And I just could not keep up my fitness. I kept getting injured, and I gained all this weight back, and I felt all this resistance, and I ended up walking away. And I didn't know what was happening. So the Lord finally, years later, after I had gained all this weight, I was sitting in a stupor. I didn't know what was going on. The Lord ended up sending me and my family to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We did not want to go, but he closed every door up in here in Ohio. He caused us to lose our home. We tried to get a homeless shelter. We went to the lowest homeless shelters you could find. The lowest hotels that were $40. We cannot get a shelter. We cannot get a hotel. We cannot even rent a hotel for $40. And so I knew it then that the Lord was blocking all access for us to stay in Ohio. He did not want us to stay in Ohio. So long story short, I got all my kids, packed all of our things in the car, and we ended up driving down to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where the Lord told me to stay. And down there, I went through all this transformation all over again. I started fasting and praying. The Lord was bringing things to me. I started receiving revelation for things that I had known for many years, how my father was, loosing things on the altar, holding me in a spiritual bondage, and how that opened up the door to other people who were controlled by Satan to come into my life and to destroy God's plans for my life. Long story short, this man, I ended up working for him, but the Lord let me know that this was the man all along who had sexually violated me while I was in Ohio, who had been tormenting me. This man knew the woman who was also following me around. Now, while I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, all types of things were happening. My children kept getting sick. I was getting sick. We had all these spiritual attacks. People were following us around. People were harassing us. And there were problems after problems. My car kept breaking down. I did everything I could. My kids were getting in trouble in school. My son started having problems. They were attacking his brain, losing source of him. The Lord let me know all of this. And, we ended up having to leave because my daughter kept having seizures, and I lost my job. I was there for 3 years, but I met this man, and the Lord let me know that was the man who had been antagonizing me, and he had made a covenant with him, a promise, because this man had violated me sexually and caused me to lose the husband, because I was supposed to have been preparing for my spouse back in 2009. I never got the spouse because this man sexually assaulted me. So the Lord had wanted him to get saved, to be converted, to give his life over to God, receive salvation, and marry me. This man did not want to marry me because he was ashamed of me because I was a black woman. Not only that, I had children out of wedlock. So he did not want my kids. So he was doing everything in his power to cause me to lose my kids. He was attacking my kids, caused my daughter to have seizures, caused my son to get in trouble, wanted him to catch a case and end up in jail. And this kept going on. So once we finally ended up leaving Pennsylvania, this kept happening once we went to Ohio. And I had been sexually violated by this man, and my daughter started cutting herself. She confided in me that she was being sexually violated at night. The same things that I was going through was happening to her. She was feeling things, touching her and doing things sexually to her at night while she was sleeping at night. She didn't see anything. When she would take a shower, she would feel hands all over her breasts and touching all over her areas. And this is some of the things I've experienced. I did not divulge that information to her, but I had already had a children and family service had come out to our home because I ended up taking my kids out of school and homeschooling them. They said it was educational neglect, even though we had filled out all the paperwork, let them know that I was going to be homeschooling my kids. No one gave us any extra information. I never got a letter from the superintendent that said anything further was needed. So I thought everything was okay. I put my children into a subscription-based program. I was paying $70 a month. It was a Christian program through Sunlight and Monarch. And I was teaching my kids that way. So this man started coming out to the home, and he told me that if I don't have a code to give him, he was going to contact Children and Family Services upon me and file a complaint. And he did that because I didn't have a code. I told him I was homeschooling my kids. And so they ended up coming out for educational neglect. So we had already had an open case pending. So my daughter started cutting herself. I was afraid to report it to the hospitals, but I did it anyway because I wanted to get her help. So we ended up taking her to the hospital, and I told her exactly what happened. I said my daughter said she was being sexually violated, and I felt it was by the same man who was violating me, my former boss. So they said that, they had to contact DCFS and report all of this. They called the police. I filed a report with the Richmond Heights Police Department. They contacted DCFS, And long story short, they all took my kids from me. They said they believed me, but they took my kids because they stated that since my kids were in danger, they felt that I was the target of this man, and they felt my kids wouldn't be safe being around me and in my home. Then later on, they went to say that, in court, that I was mentally ill. I looked like I was suffering from mental illness. They did not give me a mental health evaluation or anything. They just took my kids and lied and said I had schizophrenia. Now, they didn't initially have a diagnosis for me. They did not give me a diagnosis. When I took a mental health evaluation nearly 3 months after my children were gone, I got it done from the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court, the same people who ordered for my children to be taken out of the home. They would not release the diagnosis to me. They said they don't give it to the clients. They don't divulge that information to the clients. So they told me to contact my caseworker. I asked her for it. She said she would have to contact her supervisor because they don't give this out. And this is one thing that was strange to me, because it's like, you're mandating that I have to have therapy and all these things to get my kids back. You're saying I have a mental illness, but you're not giving me a diagnosis. You don't have a legitimate diagnosis to pretty much solidify your claims that I have this mental illness that's preventing me from taking care of my kids. The truth of the matter was I did not have a mental illness. They lied about everything to cover up what the abuse that I had already alleged against this former boss of mine. Long story short, I found that this man was a Freemason. Now I'm going to put here a clip of footage to show you that I never had schizophrenia. The original diagnosis was always adjustment disorder, and this is something that incurred as a result of my kids being taken from the home.
I didn't mean to cut you off before, but I did want to follow up to see if you had any questions about our previous conversation.
Yes, I do, because, I hope you understand this is my mental health, and when I have a diagnosis, I do take it pretty seriously. So I was just concerned because I did look up some of the, symptoms and the descriptions of the adjustment disorder, and it actually went further into detail than just being sad on and off about a certain situation that happened and occurred. So I guess I was just wondering what made you come up with that diagnosis based off of me. What classified me as having an adjustment disorder?
Absolutely. So basically, when we're looking at adjustment disorder, we're looking at different criteria. First one being the development of emotional or behavioral symptoms in response to an identifiable stressor occurring within 3 months of the onset of the stressor. As in, you described that your children were taken out of your home and you had an emotional reaction, which is normal, right? That is the first criteria.
Right.
Second criteria that we're looking at, and you don't have to meet all of these criteria, but I do not mind breaking them down for you.
Okay, thank you.
Second criteria is the symptoms or behaviors are clinically significant, as evidenced by one or both of the following. Marked distress that is out of proportion to the severity or intensity of the stressor, taking into account the external context and cultural factors that might influence the symptoms' severity and presentation, and the significant impairment of social, occupational, and other important areas to functioning. You do not meet criteria to both of these, but there was the reaction of the event that has caused you some distress. I'm not saying it has become debilitating. That's not what we're looking at here, but there was a significant reaction to the removal of the kids from your home.
I'm not depressed or anything like that.
No. If it was depression, we would look at major depressive disorder, either mild, moderate, or severe. That is not what we're looking at all.
Okay, so all you found was just the adjustment disorder because my kids are gone, and that's normal?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
it's very normal. And the biggest thing about adjustment disorder is the last criteria that says once the stressor of its consequences terminated, the symptoms do not persist for more than an additional 6 months.
They took my kids out of here wrongfully. But the Lord let me know that he's going to be judging every single one of you. He's going to be judging all those who held on to my kids, all those who refused to help us, and all of those who did not do anything about James Penny III, Jim Penny, and Kiana L. Palmer, because these people came together. The Lord let me know. Had these people had not been antagonizing me and attacking me, then this would have never happened. My kids would have never been taken out of the home. See, Kiana Palmer had started back harassing me when I was on Facebook. Back in 2000, probably 2010, she was early on. Even before that, she was harassing me, putting her burdens upon me. And so this is why I was sitting in a stupor. This is why I gained all the weight back. If you look back, I have pictures that I put up where I started seeing her features. She was harassing me then and my children. I'm going to show you some footage here of her doing things. And I was doing the exact same things because this woman was attaching herself to my soul all along. And so this is why God's going to be judging everyone because of these two. Now, I have been caught up in sin. I am not proud to admit it, but since this woman has been casting all of her perverse spirits upon me, things that I've been delivered of many years ago, I have now fallen back into sin. I got involved in a sexual relationship with a man. We had sex twice, and I'm not happy about it. And I'm going to come here and confess and come clean because I feel like had God not allowed these people to attach themselves to me, to join themselves with my soul, cast demons inside of me, this would have never happened. It says it in the Bible, two become one flesh. If you join your flesh with a harlot, you become a harlot. So when God has allowed an unclean woman to sexually assault me along with a man, and I've made many of videos reporting these claims, so that they cannot deny these claims. I have made many reports that this woman has been coming, trying to put her homosexual spirits upon me, trying to antagonize me, and she's been doing this all along to cause me to fall. The Lord let me know that they worked together to destroy me because they wanted to destroy my ministry and they wanted to destroy God's work for my life. And so for that, they are going to be judged, both of them. They have caused my children to suffer. They have cast their burdens on my children. As a result, my children have suffered in foster care. My daughter has become extremely morbidly obese. She has diabetes. She's been facing sexual abuse and physical abuse, which has been covered up. She sent me a text message recently telling me she has been punched in the ear by her own foster mother, and they've kept her down there. They have kept her in this woman's possession because the woman manipulates. My daughter says she manipulates, and she'll lie and have everyone believe her. So these are all the things that my children have experienced. They're trying to keep my son permanently now. They want to file PPL for him, permanent place arrangement living, the same thing they did for my daughter. They don't want him to come home. They have plans and intentions to put him in a residential facility in Pennsylvania. And I've been reaching out to everyone because there was really no reason to ever keep my kids and to wrongfully keep them. Now, there's another thing that I'm going to be exposing. Because see, ever since my son has been in foster care, he's been getting into trouble left and right. Yes, he had one problem that happened because the Lord let me know they were doing sorcery on his brain when he was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But ever since he's been here in foster care, he's been getting all types of criminal activity. And the Lord let me know that this started happening because when my son was in Ohio Guidestone, when he was first taken out in the year 2020, Becky Sawyers had him have FaceTime visits with his biological father, Pierre Davis. This is something that I was adamant and against because Pierre Davis sexually molested and abused both of my children. I told everybody about this. There was numerous reports, and this is why I kept him away from his children. They hadn't seen him in over 10 years. But while my children were in foster care, Becky Sawyers made it that her and Children Family Services and juvenile courts wanted to set forth visitation for my children to have visitations with Pierre Davis. They did not have the visitation with my daughter because my daughter stated that she did not. I guess she became sad when she knew he was going to be involved. And the foster mother reported that my daughter went in her room and closed her door and stayed in there all day because she did not want to see Pierre. And so they did not have the visitations with him. They knew something was wrong. For her to have that reaction, they decided they weren't going to have the visitation, but they insisted that my son have a visitation with him and that he gets reacquainted with him and be introduced back into his life. Well, he had these FaceTime visits with Pierre Davis until he decided, he had a few visits until he decided he no longer wanted to have them. But during that time, Pierre Davis was allowed to use sorcery and form attachments to my son. And he has been controlling him ever since. He has sabotaged my son and tried to ruin him. As you know, I posted a video on YouTube back in December of 2021. Here's the video here, where I talked about how Pierre Davis was dabbling in witchcraft and sorcery when I met him, and that he was connected closely with my father, had been seeing him all along, and that the Holy Spirit had let me know that he was trying to sabotage my son. Well, if you see here, I was right. And Pierre Davis has a very long, lengthy criminal record. And I'll show you all of that here. After my son started having FaceTime visits with his biological father, Pierre Davis, I started noticing that he was looking, acting, and sounding like Pierre. And my son never looked like Pierre before. He's always looked like me. He sounded his own way. And as you know, Pierre Davis has a long, lengthy criminal history and record ranging from theft, misuse of credit cards, criminal trespass, misconduct involving the public transportation system, criminal simulation, soliciting, arson, aggravated arson, and criminal simulation again. Now, the Lord already let me know that his mother and him had come up with a way to try and cast his burdens upon my son. Never since, my son has had all types of trouble with the law. My son was not a criminal. I said I don't hold my son accountable. When he does something wrong, I hold him accountable. But I'm not going to have him accountable for something someone else has caused. See, they set all of this up because they wanted to destroy my son. These are the things that they wanted to do. They wanted to destroy him. They wanted to have a reason to keep him because they know they wrongfully took my children in the first place. So they have been going out of their way to try and discredit me, to make me seem as if I'm mentally ill, and to make it seem as if my children are problematic and they're not doing well, but they're in my possession, in my care. Every time we have any type of reevaluation or case plan coming up. All of a sudden, my son would get in all types of trouble, even though he was doing well. They said I didn't have my son in therapy. Actually, my son was going to therapy, and I'm going to be placing footage here that my son was actually doing well in therapy.
Good job. That's a good hit. That's far.
I want to get it like almost to that sign.
Okay. So which one? Talking about the 150 there?
Yeah, or at least to the middle. Yeah, that's why I look like my goal.
All right, go to the next time.
Oh, my goodness.
Look at that.
My goodness.
Going in the hole.
I'm telling you.
He is good at it. He didn't want to come at first.
Placed it.
Tiger Woods.
Wow.
Instead of having two facing the tree out there, point more toward the left. Take this way.
You got this. I spread it out.
Not even cut like that.
Spread it out. You ain't cut like what? Like eating? You better.
Yeah, I was I kind of played with it instead of making the thing.
Okay, did all the participants get dough? Okay.
As you can see, my son was attending therapy at a place called Project Lift where he was thriving. He'd actually learned how to play golf and he made his own pizza. We had events once every month and it was very flexible where we were first going inside the office and they allowed us to do, virtual visits as well. They said they had a schedule that was flexible to accommodate us. And suddenly, after my caseworker had reached out to the therapist that my son was seeing, Becky Sawyers had reached out to her to inquire about how therapy was going. All of a sudden, my son's therapist just started acting really funny. She was giving us a difficult time. She always acted as if she was becoming frustrated or aggravated with my son and as if she didn't really want to have sessions with him any longer. And so she started giving us a difficult time about virtual sessions. She no longer wanted us to have virtual. She kept saying, my son wasn't engaged. And I tried to explain to her because he had other extracurricular activities. And on top of that, we were getting services after school because the school he was going to through Richmond Heights local school district, they were found in violation, so they had him taking extra classes after school, and so it was difficult for us to make it down there. Then all of a sudden my car broke down and she just would not work with us or give us a chance, and so my son ended up not being able to attend therapy anymore. And this is something that was typical. Like I said, it always happens whenever my caseworker, Becky Sawyers, would reach out to any of my therapists or any of our therapists, suddenly they would start canceling visits or they would become ill and just the sessions would just fall apart. And so, I knew that they had something to do with it. The Lord was letting me know that they were using sorcery and this is something that they were doing to stop us from having therapy so they can have another excuse and reason for my children not to come home to say, I wasn't engaged in therapy or my kids weren't engaged in therapy. So I'm bringing all this to your attention because I need you all to help me pray. There has been no one to step up for us, but God's hand is going to be moving against the wicked, and everything that's been done in the dark should be brought forth to light.